Well, thank you all for sticking through this another little session here. I appreciate it. We're going to be talking a little bit about investment fraud here, and I want you to think that this is not just applying to people who are very wealthy, Wall Street investors, all that kind of stuff. Investment fraud is alive and well in North Carolina, unfortunately. It attacks a lot of average people. And you know, a lot of our senior citizens remember when a savings account or a CD could get them 12% interest back in the 70s, 80s. Yeah, right. Whoa, some of you younger people don't know that. But some folks get very easily conned because they think they remember back to those good old days and that maybe they found something that will return those kind of things. But fraudsters are working in every community across North Carolina. We're doing this workshop in two different parts. I'm going to talk generally, and John is going to follow up with a little bit more about the detail on some of these crimes. Okay, crooks are real. They're here in North Carolina, and there's a good chance at some point one of them is going to target you individually, or certainly somebody that you're dealing with in your professional life. So rather than doing something constructive with their lives, these are very smart people who are sit up all night long trying to figure how they can say things to make themselves attractive to others, make others trust them, so that therefore they can help them with their financial needs. So we want to make sure that people have a sporting chance in the investment world to make something with their retirement money, nest egg money, and you know, seniors are the target. There's a target for two reasons. Number one, they're the ones with assets. Folks that are living credit card to credit card that are much younger are not necessarily their targets, but seniors who have pensions coming in and Social Security coming in, or maybe have sold their house and downsize and have known to reap an asset, that's when they come into play. The second reason is that unfortunately it's a known fact that after certain ages, certain people's cognitive impairments decrease, and so that makes them a little bit more of a target. And then you compound that with loneliness and not being socialized as much. They're looking to make new friends, new connections, and fill certain emotional voids in their life by this new friendship that unfortunately sometimes turns sour. Now, my job as Secretary of State is all the stockbrokers and investment advisors have to be registered with us. In this area, I have law enforcement authority, I have prosecutors. We are the cop on the beat. In order for the feds to be interested in a securities issue here in North Carolina or anywhere else, it is likely that an individual victim, when I first started being Secretary of State, the losses needed to be over $100,000 per person. Now it's up to more like $500,000 per person. So that is the zone that we work in. And compounded with multiple victims, some of the things that we do are huge amounts. So criminals have learned how to operate in the internet world. They've learned how to speed up things with the use of burner phones, that electronic transfers that sometimes people use and are not careful enough about protecting their computers. All of those things are ripe for things to happen. So the message I want you to be alert about is that when people are saying or doing things that they've never said or done before, or trusting someone, relying on someone that only came into their life within the last few months, and now kind of quoting them and talking about their wisdom, to call us. If somebody's pitching a product, if you want to know if somebody's really legitimate in this field, call us. We call it check before you write one. And I could stand up here all the rest of this day and tell you of losses that happened here in North Carolina, that if someone would have called us and said, is this person allowed to sell an investment product, or is this product approved to be sold, we could have saved hundreds of thousands and millions of, maybe trillions of dollars, lots of money from people if they'd have just called, because products have to be registered with us. If somebody says they've got an exception, there are not very many. The only person in the whole wide world that can clear an exemption for an investment is me right here, or my staff. So call us. We had a guy in Raleigh that wrote a $2 million check and then got a queasy feeling and wrote a $3 million check. And if he'd have called us before writing either one of those, he'd have found out that that guy he was writing the check for had just been convicted in the state of Arizona for basically the same thing, but he was turning federal evidence against some people higher up, and he was going to need $4.9 million to pay restitution. We could have told you the whole story. And stories like that happen all the time. People get their license yanked involuntarily because these brokerage houses do not like to see their names in the newspaper. These people frequently don't get charged when they should have been charged when they're leaving a brokerage house because the brokerage doesn't want the bad publicity. But we've got that information. Technically, it is there online, but it's pretty difficult for mere mortals to read. So just call us. Call us, get the person's name, and call us because we could prevent so many crimes. So here's some of the things that John and I are going to talk about. Here's what you need to know. Smart people get conned. Doctors get conned, lawyers get conned, but there's an embarrassment about it, and we see that with senior citizens. Smart people, prominent community people don't like it to be known that they, have lost some money. And lots of times people in their profession, they can make it up. But if you're a 50-year-old or a 60-year-old working at what I call an average job in North Carolina, you don't have enough time left to make up that retirement asset. So they're called scam artists for a very good reason. They're very crafty. They're very crafty at what they do. They put on good acts. Here's what they do. They appear to be high standing and moral. They give generously to charities, whether they're churches or boys clubs, girls clubs, those kinds of things. A new swimming pool in the community, a Y, whatever, to get their picture in the paper, look very upstanding. But it's all a part of their act. It's all a part of their pitch. They appear very non-threatening. There is such a thing that's known as affinity crime, and people work through groups that are already together. Churches are one. They will get in a church group, they will say the same language, they will pray together, they will work on projects together, they will comfort people, they will do everything else that ordinary church member, and ultimately they are working through that church group. We had even one church who invested their building fund with one of these characters. We had one church where they kind of signed a pledge not to tell what was going on. One of the key things, if somebody says, it's a secret, don't tell anybody, that's part of what the act that they're doing. There are no secret investments out there. Lots and lots of research and analysis goes into, picking investments and what have you. If you don't understand how the money is made in the investment, you ought not be talking about it. If you don't understand what the product is, you don't need to be thinking about being involved in it. And if they need your money to complete some big deal, like finishing battleships or ocean liners, my little $50,000, if I have $50,000 going to finish a big battleship, come on. Then there are things that seem very mysterious and like over your head, really. Mumbo jumbo talk, things like exchange traded funds or index funds or certain world monetary things like, and getting you to think that you can get a penny off of this and there's millions of transactions a day. And, if it seems too good to be true, call us. If it seems too good to be true, if you can 30 or 40% interest, people do fall for this, I'm sorry to say. And sometimes people will fight you when you try to tell them that this is not really real. Part of the con is that frequently the con will go on for a couple of years. People may get payments. That's only to get more people involved, because that person that got good returns and have been in it for a while, whether they actually got money or just got something on paper, they'll talk to their friends at the Hardee's or McDonald's or wherever they gather with people. And somebody will say, and I'm really having a hard time, prices are going up, gas is going up. And then somebody will eventually say, well, I found a good investment, and they'll tell them about it. So sometimes people become unwilling salesmen for others. Let me tell you, I talked in the other about those 12 counts, those felonies, the 4 each, three different offenses, 4 each. That guy up in Forsyth County was charged with ripping off about $1 million. And we don't know. We think we're trying to find more victims there. We did a cease and desist on him, and then we did the actual charges. He's being held on $5 million secured bond, which is quite pleasing to me, because sometimes judges don't put these folks under very much bond. Most of these folks that are frauding out there are going to be 50 years old or more. They're going to appear to be mature, respected people. They're not going to be a bunch of whippersnappers, although we did have one young guy about 21 years old that had ripped off a bunch of people down in Brunswick County. But they don't look like the typical criminals. But call us the moment that you think something is fishy. John publishes a monthly investment newsletter and does a very good job with keeping up with the cases and explains what's happened in the cases. Sometimes that gives people an idea about something they're hearing from their neighbors or their family member talking about. John also has something in there every month that explains some of these phrases that you hear maybe on Bloomsburg Report or some of the other financial shows on TV. He makes common sense out of those. Then we have a tracking of cases that are still pending and also tracking of all the investor education activities that we're doing throughout the state. So that's a very good resource for you to use. We had one of the ones up in the mountains recently. This high living is very much a part of it. This guy bought Jaguar and took his friends on, nice trips and parties and restaurants and all that kind of stuff. They'll tell you up and down that they're not doing anything wrong, they're not doing anything wrong. And the worst one that slams me, in addition to working through a church, which I think ought to be an aggravating circumstance for punishment, is when they flat out admit that they have violated the law, but they say to the person, if you want your money back, if you turn me into the state or anybody else, how are you going to get your money back? Unfortunately, folks, that's a flaw with the person who doesn't act also, because if they've been scammed and it's been stolen from them, they're willing to let that person steal from somebody else to repay them. I don't know. The state had a very successful case that was around in the Davidson area called Zeke Rewards, and there were people, that went on for a long, long time. It was a penny stock kind of operation. And that one became a very, very successful case in that there were a lot of people in that part of the state and other states who had made a lot of money in it. And it was a federal case, not a state case. And I like taking my cases to federal court because they have asset recovery, which is much easier than it is in North Carolina under North Carolina law. And in that case, maybe as much as 3/4 of the money was returned to the victims because under federal law, there was a receiver appointed who had all of the records from the company, and he was liquidating properties and houses and yachts and boats and something over in Bermuda or some other place, but also had the names and addresses of everybody who had invested earlier and saw what kind of profits they had made, and they were made to disgorge that. They were asked to voluntarily send back the money that they had earned, and if they didn't, federal law allowed the receiver to go after these people for the disgorgement. And needless to say, if you get a letter from somebody who's been appointed by the federal court saying, send back this money, most people do. Unfortunately, here, the cases that we work on, the money's been wasted away, either keeping up the scam or whatever may have caused somebody, a boyfriend, girlfriend, substance abuse, some type of addiction that became very expensive for them, gambling addiction, the money is frittered away. There are kind of two categories of folks that we deal with. Some are the professionals who at one time were licensed and then for some reason have lost their license. Generally, it's for not following company rules, whether that involves stealing or just selling a product that was not approved. And then there's the out-and-out folks that never held a license. And we have both varieties here in North Carolina. So those are the kind of things that I want to tell you is going on here. We as Southerners and we as older folks are just too cotton picking polite. We need to hang up the phone. Already today I have ignored before coming here at noontime, 4 telephone calls that looked like they were from North Carolina. Some of them weren't. I don't answer any telephone calls anymore unless I see somebody's name up there that I know would be calling me. Because if you answer the phone, you've just validated the fact that it's a live phone. If you click that you don't want to get any more calls, that validates that it's a live phone. Somebody's going to sell that and it's going to be marketed out to somebody else. You're going to get more of these cotton picking calls. My best advice to you is do what I'm doing. Let it go to voicemail. Of those 4 telephone calls, there wasn't a single voicemail left. So they either want to sell me something or tell me. I actually had one to leave the IRS scam that I was going to be arrested for not paying the IRS. I actually left that message on my phone. You know. So one last thing I want to talk about, and that's cryptocurrency. How many of you have heard of cryptocurrency? How many of y'all know what it is? Not a single hit. Okay, we got one here. Let me. It's a new vocabulary. It's kind of be trendy in the securities area. Now, cryptocurrency is privately made up units that mimic money on the internet. They mimic money. They are not backed by any government. They are not actual currency in any traditional sense. In fact, they only exist on the internet through codes that let you buy them, use them, or sell them. The most famous is Bitcoin, and people have been fascinated because the price is going up and up and up. That's one of the brand names. There are quite a few out there. They are not legal tender put out by any national treasury. And you know, these people behind these can create a new one every day or can create 10 a day out there. You know, anyway, we don't regulate cryptocurrencies. No government does. But we do regulate investing. So here's where the difference comes. We've put 2 companies, alleged companies, internet crowds, out of business with cease and desist orders on the internet. If you want to acquire cryptocurrency to buy things with, if you want to take your next paycheck and turn it into cryptocurrency and go buy pizza with it and fill up your gas tank with it and all that kind of stuff, pay your kids for taking out the trash or whatever you do in cryptocurrency, that's fine. That is not illegal. But if someone sells cryptocurrency here in North Carolina for you to hold, that becomes an investment. That's just like a stock. You buy a stock and you hope that it will spin off dividends or it will appreciate. That's an investment. They have to be registered with us as an investment, and the person selling has to be registered with us. So we put 2 cryptocurrency promoters that were here in North Carolina, a cease and desist on them. On the one company, they said they were in the United Kingdom. The minute we put the cease and desist on the North Carolinian, that company disappeared from the web. We have been trying to serve them to make our cease and desist order permanent and effective in the United Kingdom. There is no address, there is no there at the address that they say. All that was on the internet was 2 little cartoon characters, so if you want to invest in Hello Kitty or something like that, go right ahead. But no, I'm kidding about that. The other one was a 21-year-old selling. The other one was somebody in Forsyth County, a man who had been involved. We've been watching him for a little while, and he has now added cryptocurrency to his array of things he was promoting. We were not sure he was crossing the line on some of his other stuff, but when he started doing cryptocurrency, we put a cease and desist on him and we had a search warrant, so we took his computer contents and are trying to follow up on some other things. But that company also, poof, was just completely gone. That one allegedly was in Dubai. We've been trying to serve them in Dubai and have not been successful, but poof, they were gone. Now, I'm sure they've put up something else. They're kind of like the Canadian pharmacies. You take one down and poof, you know, they can put up something else. So that's where we intersect with cryptocurrency. So if you get somebody that's talking about that, if they're buying it to hold, to make a profit off of it, then that is where we come in, and the person selling it and the product have to be registered. And there are no people registered in North Carolina to sell. There are no currencies registered in North Carolina. So buying it to hold is illegal here. It's not illegal for the buyer, but it is illegal here in North Carolina. So that's what we do. We appreciate getting complaints. We would rather have 100 complaints that don't amount to anything that's really big, because we do get some people to say, I usually get my dividend check on the 3rd day of the month and it didn't get here. They're calling the afternoon of the 3rd day. We find out, no, there was something wrong with the computer drop on it or something in the mail and it comes the next day. We would rather have 100 of those. We'd rather have 99 of those and miss that 100th one that really is a crime. So please, use us. The complaint form is up there, sosnc.com. at sosnc.gov. We used to be a .com. And I'm going to turn it over to John, and he's going to tell you about some of the more details that are very interesting and then sometimes funny about they're not funny though for the people that have lost their money.
I have about 10 minutes to get through a bunch of stuff, so I'm going to do like Mr. Benson did this morning and kind of push through really quickly through some of the things. The first thing I want to point out is, who's the most at risk? Obviously, we know it's seniors. Seniors are the number one target. And why is it? Well, it's because they have the cash, right? A lot of seniors are at the point of their lives where they have liquidated their assets. They get a monthly check coming in of some sort, and that's really what the crooks are looking for. I do these presentations a lot before senior groups, and I always have a bunch of them come up to me afterwards and say, well, I'm on a fixed income. I'm not really a target, am I? And I say, yes, ma'am, or yes, sir, because look at it from the perspective of the crook. Yes, they hope you're Bill Gates' grandmother, but that's not really what's their motivation. Their motivation is, if I can get $1 from you, that's $1 I didn't have to begin with. So you don't have to be rich to be a target. You just have to be someone who has assets, and seniors are the number one target. Now, there are some risk factors that, beyond just being elderly, that or having access to cash. Here's some, you're familiar with these. Duke University did a study that found that 35% of people over the age of 71 have some form of mild cognitive impairment or Alzheimer's. UCLA did a study in 2012 that showed that older brains had a harder time recognizing the kind of cues that younger brains are able to pick up when somebody is being dishonest or deceitful. And so that all sort of combines to explain why seniors and older adults are more vulnerable. Now let's explode some of the myths that we may have out there, the perceptions of who the likely victim is. I think we tend to think that it's older women. The stereotype is that the man was the one that did all the family finances and took care of everything. He passed on, and so it was this poor little widow who had now to figure out how to pay the cable guy and stuff like that. We also think it's the bozos, the dummies, the people who are just really kind of too stupid to get out of bed in the morning. And we also tend to think that it's people who are using these things as kind of like a home run, swinging for the fences, people trying to hit it big. Well, in reality, the most likely victims of investment fraud tend to be male. They tend to be college-educated men. They tend to be college-educated men having a higher than average income. Ladies, you know who I'm talking about. The kind of man who won't ask for directions. Like me, right? Yeah, you're self-aware, aren't you, sir? So it's the kind of guy who says, who's used to being the alpha male, making the decisions in both business and at home. I trust my judgment. I know I'm a smart guy, so therefore I know what to look out for. I know I can't get scammed. But as the secretary mentioned, we had a well-known, a prominent person here in North Carolina get snookered out of $5 million, okay? Look at the victims of Bernie Madoff, all right? You had to be, the average person couldn't go and invest with Bernie. You had to actually be invited to get ripped off by Bernie, okay? Very smart people. So if they can get conned, anybody can. All right. Now, an area that gives us concern in the Secretary of State's office is so-called free lunch seminars. Now, there is nothing inherently illegal about offering a free meal to get somebody to come listen to you to talk. But you got to ask yourself why. Why are they giving me a free meal? Why, we humans don't do anything if it doesn't involve money, right? We see these things here where it says, leave your checkbook at home, no cost or obligation, nothing will be sold. That's because they want to get you one-on-one, okay? They don't want to get in front of a big group and have a bunch of people talking, asking questions and everything. They want to get you one-on-one. So that's why they say they want to put you at ease. Leave your checkbook. I'm not going to try to sell you anything. I'm going to do that later. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Okay? Now, one of the areas that gives us concern with these is the over-reliance of these very fancy-sounding names. This person says he's been in the business for 20 years and he's a senior estate planning specialist. Now, at first blush, that sounds impressive until you ask the question, well, what is a senior estate planning specialist? How do you get to be one? Madam Secretary, do you confer this title on anybody?
Nope.
Do the feds?
Nope.
I don't know how you get to be one. All right? The point here is this. The financial industry is full of very fancy sounding titles, but that's all they are. They're all fancy sounding. They are designed purposefully to try to invoke in your mind that the person that has one of these titles has some experience that you don't have. Now, where we're really concerned is all those little letters that are after people's names. Okay? Now, if I handed you a business card and it said John Maron CHSG on it, what would that say to you? It says nothing, no. But, C probably stands for certified, so, my point is that most of the time I get blank stares when I ask people about this. And that's exactly the reaction I expect. Until you discover that CHSG stands for?
Certified High School Graduate.
So now, how many CHSG? No. But again, the point is just be very careful and very skeptical of relying on somebody's credentials. Credentials can be faked. Credentials can be puffed up to make them sound like more than they should be. What would you expect? What would you hope the minimum level of education required to be a licensed, lawfully registered stockbroker in the state of North Carolina? Anybody? Should be at least a high school? Is that You would think you don't have to graduate pre-K. All you have to do is make a 70 or better on the licensing exam, and you could be a stockbroker. Now, how scary is that? No. I'm not suggesting that the exam is easy. I'm not suggesting that at all. But I'm just saying you don't have to be a graduate of the Duke Fuqua Business School to be a stockbroker, okay? Now, the Secretary mentioned cryptocurrency. That's the biggest, brightest, glitziest thing right now. As she mentioned, these only exist. They may call themselves coins. They may call them tokens. There's nothing physical there. They are purely a series of ones and zeros that exist exclusively on the internet, okay? Their values are only what people are prepared to pay for them or say that they are. If we agreed that this little clicker is worth $5 and you're happy with that exchange, you give me a $5 bill, I give you the clicker, we're happy, that's great. But when you decide that, no, this isn't really worth $5, I'm not going to accept it, then the whole thing kind of can collapse. So just understand that. There are over 1,500 different cryptocurrencies. It's open source coding, so anybody with any bit of computer savvy could easily create their own digital coin. You can have your own coin and put it out there on the internet for anybody to buy. There's nothing, again, inherently illegal about that. It's when you use it in investing, where it becomes it becomes a security, essentially. And we see something called an initial coin offering. They can be legitimate. They can be a legitimate way for a business to raise financing capital to operate their business. But it's oftentimes being used not that way. It's being promoted as that, but it's not really operating that way. It's nothing more than a scam. These kinds of things are very susceptible to pump and dump scams. They will get together and say at a certain time, we're all going to buy this coin at this low price. And then we're going to get on our social networks and we're going to just pump and pump and pump and just promote it. And then when the price rises up here at 6 o'clock on Tuesday, we're all going to coordinate and sell, and we're going to reap the profits, and everybody else is going to get out. They say this blatantly on the internet. This is the case that the Secretary alluded to. These are our two cartoon characters. This is Andrew and Mike. I guess this is Andrew and this is Mike. I don't know. They're based somewhere in Central Europe. What country is Central Europe? I don't know. So, would you trust a cartoon with your money? Well, if so, then these fellas have a deal for you. All right? Very quickly, because we're running out of time, I did want to bring to your attention some new things that are happening. FINRA, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, they are the self-regulating organization that regulates the brokerage industry. They had a rule that became effective in February that says that brokerage firms may place a temporary hold on disbursements from the accounts of specified adults when there is reasonable belief of financial exploitation. All right, so there's this thing that's out there now, this rule that brokerage firms are expected to adhere to. There is also an amendment to an existing rule that says, again, effective February 5th, the brokerage firms are required to make reasonable efforts to obtain contact information of a trusted contact person for that account holder. So that if there's a suspicion of fraud or abuse, exploitation, then the brokerage firm can reach out and contact somebody to make them aware of it. Okay. Right. This is a FINRA rule, so it only applies to brokerage firms. So, you know, we've done all kinds of partnership. I and our team have done over 1,300 different presentations. We've partnered with a lot of different organizations like the Conference of District Attorneys, NCP3A, the North Carolina Senior Consumer Fraud Task Force, of which I am a co-chair, along with my partner in crime, Stephanie Bias. We want people thinking with their heads and not their hearts, okay? The con artists want to make an emotional appeal. They want you thinking emotionally. All right? They want you to think that you can have a 10-layer triple fudge chocolate cake, eat the entire thing, and not gain an ounce. But I'm here to tell you it doesn't work that way. I have been looking for that magic cake. The Secretary makes a great cake, but it's not that magic. Here's, you know, if you ever have a complaint or an issue, we want you to document. It's going to be a he said, she said situation if you run into any kind of a question. Whoever has the best paper trail generally has the better, stronger case. So document everything when you're talking to your brokerage or investment professional. Red flags, promises of a high rate of return. As the Secretary said earlier, there are no guarantees with investing. If somebody says, I can guarantee you X%, they are lying to you. There are only two entities that can absolutely guarantee you any specific rate of return: the U.S. Treasury and your federally insured bank or credit union on their deposit accounts. Anybody else that says, I can guarantee you 10, 15, 20, 125%, they're lying to you. They're lying to you. Don't let embarrassment keep you from contacting us. That works to the advantage of the con artists. They want you to feel shame. They want you to feel be silenced and to let them just be and do their work. All right? We want to get them off the street and all the justice that they deserve. There's my contact information. I want you to feel free to call me, shoot me an email. I do weddings and bar mitzvahs, so if any of you have, I don't do pony rides, but if you have a group of people in your neck of the woods where you think a fraud prevention presentation would be helpful, I'm more than happy to do it as long as she lets me travel, and so far she's not clipped my wings. So we love to do it. I will hush at this point. Do you have any questions? We need to transition, but any questions? Well, we appreciate your time, and this was the best one after all. I mean, this is, thank you all.